Okay, so happy birthday, Hiroshi Hara. He's, I think, 85 years old today. A nice age. And you'll see, I have on this PowerPoint presentation also Arata Isozaki, and uh, Shinohara. Dar o să vorbim doar despre Hiroshi Hara. Întâi niște fotografii cu el. Sunt un arhitect interesant. De fapt, japonezii, după cum bine știți, au arhitecți foarte buni. Și stau și mă întreb de ce ei au arhitecți atât de buni și atât de mulți. Cred că în planul premiului Pritzker, sorry, I am talking in Romanian and I wanted to, I am agitated, I'm sorry. Yeah, I begin like this, so I talk in English, sorry, because I do want to, the whole series is in English as well. Here his architectural theory now, so as is the case with other Japanese architects, they do not only build, but they also think about building and what it means to build, and they have interesting theories, and they push architecture forward. Here you have 3 Japanese architects. I don't know who is the one on the left, but in the middle is Arata Isozaki, and on the right is Hiroshi Hara. And the Hara House. We begin with this building that I imagine was for himself, the Hara House from Tokyo, 1974. His architecture, in my opinion, in some works, if not in all of them, is dangerously close to certain elements which characterized postmodern architecture. And there are risks there. But he was not the only one, of course, and some of those elements are not, you know, in a strident way present, but they are a little bit, and this creates, I think, a deficiency in the sense that you know, they become circumscribed to a certain time and a certain place, and a little bit too much. But again, like for example, these things here, you know, these curved things, you know, and the symmetry and these as well. In my opinion, they are not. They are a little bit. You know, I mean, close to that superficiality which postmodernism brought upon us tragically, but it was not, fortunately, for a very long time. And nevertheless, it is an interesting house with, you know, curious. Look at these doors. Look at the size of these doors. Look at the height. This is not a 2 meters, 10 centimeters tall door. And also about these openings here. So there are interesting things, you know, like I know in Sibiu in the Middle Ages, or closer, no, maybe, well, not really Middle Ages, but there are buildings with a short, you know, the height of some doors is you know, like 1 meter and 80 centimeters and even less. I know Neufer do the Q something like this, but I think a house or any building could accommodate even spaces which are not easily or comfortably accessible. And in my opinion, this creates a sense of surprise and mystery and maybe discomfort. But I prefer an architecture which is interesting and complex, even if it is at times so-called uncomfortable and illogical even. Anyway, I don't know what these things are here. Are they lamps of some sort, or it's very, you know, it's like an architecture close to stage design. It has a level of artificiality. The symmetry is very accentuated, but it is still interesting. You know, it's an artificial environment which does have something to say, doesn't leave you indifferent. And, you know, as such, I think it has some value. Again, the Japanese are very experimental. Practically, you can build anything in Japan. I'm not saying that all architecture from Japan is like this. They also have plenty of, you know, nonsensical architecture, commercial and so on, you know, banal architecture. We are dealing here with exceptional architects. It doesn't mean the whole of the Japanese society is filled with exceptional architects. No. Now, the Ito House, 1967. This one, again, it's interesting, you know, it's engaging, even if it is basically a cube. It is provocative. And I see here another one, you know, it seems he multiplied them at least twice. Now, some people might say this is a formalist architecture, as if form is to be avoided in architecture. You know, form is part of architecture, and yes, something like formalism does exist, and formalism is not necessarily a good thing. It's true. But form is part of architecture. In the absence of form, we might have a correct building, but it doesn't mean it's yet architecture. So this is what Hiroshi Hara said. If we try to explain the design of an African village only using images of buildings or our impressions, it wouldn't be enough. We need more theoretical support and logical explanations, and we stand a chance of finding the roots and the origins of settlements more easily. For this reason, we need a system of language. For instance, we use the theory of fields as it appears in mathematics and the physical sciences. If you want to create the space of a light field, we can select a certain topology of light. Architecture, when understood as a field conditions, comes close to urban planning. Hiroshi Hara. Already we see that he has a disposition, a mental disposition for you know, theoretical speculation. I like the fact that he understood that between architecture and what we call urbanism or urban planning is a very short distance, if at all. You can find on the web all kinds of references to all kinds of theoretical speculations relating to architecture that came from Hiroshi Hara. But he also built and quite a number of buildings, some of them quite impressive and quite big. I'm not trying to say that you know, a building needs to be big in order to be impressive. No. For example, this is a house, but you know, here is an architect who, like many other Japanese architects, infused his research with a broad theoretical understanding. And this, I think, is needed everywhere. Look at this, you know, you would say, well, it's a small, humble building. Yes, it's true. It's a small, maybe humble building, but it's architecture. And it's enough to take a look at it, to have a glimpse at it, to realize that it is architecture. And this impresses me in Japan, that the good architects from Japan, and again, not every architect from Japan is good, but the good architects are able to unite theory with practice in a meaningful way, and not in a literal way, you know, like to apply casually, I mean, not to apply a theory ad literam to a, to a building, which becomes the literal exteriorization of the theory. No, it's not like this. Under a polyhedral roof, this is about what we saw, a free domain where the types and forms of action are easily determined. The curving prismatic space of the common living area has been designed to allow the best airflow. The roof has been designed according to a complex folded and convex system of units in the form of polyhedrons composed of triangular planes. So you see, there is geometry, there is a concern with the form, but there is also a concern with the airflow. Sorry about this picture. I don't even know what it represents. I think there are studies relating to the house that I just showed, and the resolution of this picture is not so good. The world of yukatai, porous body, the basic nature of architecture is in its holes. Now, this is interesting. Stephen Hall also talks about the porous architecture. And Frank Lloyd Wright said that the architecture would be very easy to do if you didn't have to do windows. Well, Hiroshi Hara says the basic nature of architecture is in its holes. So he's not too far away from what Wright said about the windows. I imagine he referred to doors as well, but usually doors are not as many as windows. So what is a porous body, and why is it that the basic nature of architecture is in its holes? An interesting question, for example, in the drawings of Adolf Loos, the windows and the doors are shown black, and the rest of the drawing is white, just with thin black lines. But the doors and the windows, meaning the holes in the body of architecture, of his architecture, are black. That is in the drawings of Adolf Loos, and maybe they should be black. I don't know, but the idea to understand that the basic nature of architecture is in its holes is interesting. I don't know if it is correct, really, because when I think about the primeval hut that Zemper wrote about, having 4 elements: the hearth, the enclosure, which is woven, the base, and the roof, the 4. Well, where are the holes? The holes are not mentioned. So it remains to be discussed. But it is interesting, and it is at least in part valid, what Hiroshi Hara said, referring to this word, I imagine, from Japan, yukatai. 4 cube houses. We are going to see some interesting things here and in some other place. We already saw these cubicle exercises that Hiroshi Hara made. The architecture in Japan is yes, on one hand, we all know the considerations, the very warm and intimate considerations that nature plays in architectural activities in Japan, but also architecture is an abstract art in Japan, very much so, and very conceptual. They operate. You see, they take a word, and then that word could be the very conceptual brick, so to speak, brick with which they build a house, the conception of a house. And they play with opposites: interior, exterior, closed, open, and so on. This house, was built 50 years ago, but still this house, exactly as it is, if you publish this image now on Arch Daily or another, website, or Z magazine or whatever, it would stand out. It would still be, noticeable, to say the least. It's a 50 years old house, for God's sake, and it's not it's not a major building, but it still has presence. It still has something to say. It still has a significance. Why does it have this significance? Well, maybe because in the seriousness of thought with which Hiroshi Hara infused his building. Japanese architecture fascinates. It fascinates me, and it fascinates many people, maybe everybody. The question is why? Why does it fascinate so many people? Well, I think on one hand, because of its strangeness in a way, its uniqueness, its exceptionalism, its simplicity, its refinement, its philosophical rooting, its not cold relationship with what we might call the past, and yet very forward-looking, is a very interesting architecture. Here you can see, some of these works, if you want to notice, to photograph or make a screenshot of this website. The good thing today, really, what I do now is just an invitation, nothing more, because the truth is anyone can access a lot of information, very useful and very inspiring, from the web. If I am able to stir up a curiosity, then anyone can continue the work, so to speak, on his or her own. Tasaki Museum of Art from Nagano, 1986. Here it is. And we just saw cubicle buildings, and now we see something very different. Very different indeed. Obviously, Hiroshi Hara was not and is not a dogmatic architect. He didn't continue to just do cubes. Here we see a completely different architecture. Now, of course, this is a public building, but still, if he was to repeat himself stylistically, he would have multiplied the cube, but that's not what he did. What he did, though, he repeated something that he used in his own house, this rather a little bit burlesque, I would say, curvatures here. I don't know exactly what is happening underneath. These to me are a little bit, I don't know how to call them, a little bit, for example, in 2 or 3 days, it will be the birthday of Stanley Tigerman, an architect from Chicago who was very famous in postmodernism. But when I reviewed his work, I decided to talk only about Hans Scharoun. They are both born on the same day. But to me, Scharoun is by far a superior architect. And Tigerman, although he had something to say at the beginning, he began to be seduced by, frivolousness, kind of a little bit in this sense, but even more pop and postmodern. And in my opinion, these things here are, and you can see here, for example, it's just an inner facade. There seems to be nothing behind. So it's a little bit facile, in my opinion. But fortunately, the building by Hiroshi Hara does not is not reducible to just these things. Japan is very anchored, as you know, in the traditions in its own traditions. So it has a solid footing but also it's very open towards the outside, and it absorbs all kinds of influences, so much so that Arata Isozaki, for example, talked about his own schizo-eclecticism. At least he was honest. Now, this is a school, a primary school from 1987, from Naha, Okinawa. I hope I have better pictures. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have great pictures here. I should have searched more. I did search when I made this presentation, but I guess it was difficult to find them. Now, the Yamato International in Ota, in Tokyo, 1987. This is a huge building, and I think it's a good building. What I like about it is that it is monolithical, but it is also sufficiently fragmented. So it is both, it has a unity and it has a multiplicity. So it's not a crashing monolith. It's a building that is sufficiently sensitive to almost to fragment itself in the name of a verity without which it would have been just too big, or it is a whole, but it's also a whole made of parts, smaller parts. And I like this. I think this is a strategy to use when you make big buildings, so they don't become oppressive. He also built the railway station in Kyoto, also a big building, and we did it incredibly well, considering the size, because it's difficult to do a large building that has this level of fragmentation, like this building has. And variety, together with the fragmentation comes variety. It's monumental, but it is, it's like a mountain which has a lot of parts that compose it, and it's again, it descends towards you somehow, towards the viewer. Yes, it has this podium here, which is, rather massive, but otherwise the whole building seems to, as I put it, to descend towards the passerby or the viewer. So it has its scale is acceptable, if not more than acceptable. So Hiroshi Hara is also an author on architecture. He was a professor at the University of Tokyo until 1997. So until he was 54, 51, 61, yes. Sorry, after so many dealings with the, with the bank and the neo-BT, I am beginning to be unable to handle numbers properly. So these are some of the buildings he did, and we are going to see most of them. So again, not only that he built a lot, but also he authored works on architecture, theoretical works. This one, Ito House, we saw. Now the Iida City Museum in Nagano, another museum from 1988. Again, in my opinion, he would have done better without these things here, but that's my sensibility. I mean, I'm not claiming that I'm necessarily right, although it's something a little bit cartoonish and pop and postmodern that I would rather do without. But all in all, these are almost details, if I can say so. But they are bothering a little bit, and so are these round columns. Again, a little bit too convenient, if I am to use this word. But otherwise, the building is escaping the trappings of postmodernism and the trappings of, graphisms. Another school from 1992. I hope I have a better picture than this one. Sorry, sometimes it's hard to find pictures with an adequate resolution. But even this, looking at this small picture, we have to acknowledge that not too many high schools in the world look like this. Now, a library from 1998. 1998. Sorry about these pictures with Alami all over them, but what can we do? And the sad thing is that Alami does have nice pictures, but they ruin them with the, obsession with so-called authorship. I mean, they could have done it really if they wanted it in the corner of the, this is just annoying, this obsession with authorship. You do a good work and then you ruin it by putting your ID everywhere on it. Yeah, anyway, it's still informational, but Hiroshima Municipal Motomaki High School in Hiroshima, 2000s, another large high school that Hiroshi Hara built. And again, I'm unhappy with the. I wish I had better pictures, larger pictures. The aftermath of the Hiroshima bomb. So this is how Hiroshima looked after the great humanitarian decision the United States took to drop a bomb that killed more than 100,000 people, and then 3 days later or 2 days later again on Nagasaki, doing the same thing. To me it is incredible. I mean, it's unacceptable. This was Hiroshima in 1945 after the dropping of the bomb. Well, look here, you see the wing of the bomber. Hiroshima. Hiroshima. I sent one of these pictures to be published on Facebook last year or 2 years ago to a student, a young architect who is helping me with Facebook. And his Facebook account was blocked, was frozen because he sent a picture with Hiroshima and he received the message, we do not display indecent pictures. So Facebook, in its majesty, considers this an indecent or indecent picture. Can you believe it? So there it is, the superficiality of Facebook, and the lack of openness towards truth. I mean, to show such images is a call to end wars and end aggressivity and end killing each other. And Facebook consider this an indecent or indecent picture. I wonder what it understands by lack of decency. If I send pictures with my little kitten, you know, or all kinds of superficialities, they consider that those are decent. And this is not decent because this is telling the truth about something that happened. A kindergarten. It doesn't look like a kindergarten, does it? But that's because the Japanese are very open-minded about how a kindergarten should look like, you know. Why should it be with a flat roof? And why should it be, you know, timidly conceived? Why can't it be, you know, adventurous? And this is not even very adventurous. But, you know, you provoke the kids, you make them grow up in an environment that is not static. A beach house. We saw, you know, one like this, but was not on the beach. I guess he built it on the beach as well. And here he is with some Polish young men, young people. I know he was invited to Poland, and I like architects who smoke. I know now it's not very fashionable to smoke, and I don't smoke myself. But I like the fact that this architect, who is now 85, he has a cigarette in his hand, and he does seem like an interesting person. Why is it that these Japanese are like this? You know, so they are you know, so adventurous in the field of architecture. They anyway. So who are these people? He is not here. Is he now? But why did I include this picture in this presentation? On the left is, of course, there are 3 Japanese. I guess that's why, because out of 6 people, 3 are Japanese. Arata Isozaki, then Toyo Ito, and then Tadao Ando. What is it about Japan, really? What is it that you know, that important architects are born there? Well, Toyo Ito apparently was born in Korea, I think, or from Korean parents, but still is considered a Japanese architect, and correctly. Anyway, Sapporo Dome Stadium, Hiroshi Hara, they are very good at these, you know, stadiums or gymnasiums, as they are called. Look at this, you see, perfectly executed. I mean, perfectly. How do they do it? You know, are they humans? Or maybe they are extraterrestrials. Maybe the Japanese are extraterrestrials. Look at this. It's impeccably done. You know, really, how do they do it? They are humans like us. Perfectly executed, almost exasperatingly so. The stadium. But we know the Japanese can build anything, but the perfection of the execution is amazing. And look at these lines. I don't see any flaw. I don't see any imperfection. How could this be? No, really. It's somehow a little bit out of this world. And then, of course, the light, you know, the shade, you know, they model the surface of this roofing almost poetically. It's a sport arena, you know. It could have been done less perfectly. Look at this. Hiroshi Hara and the builders, the many anonymous builders. We don't know their names, but you know, they deserve great recognition. I mean, look here, you know, look at this surface, you know, it's like, somehow if you say it's perfect, I feel I'm not saying enough. If you go towards such a stadium or arena or gymnasium, I feel that the building is telling you, try your best, be perfect, be as close as possible to perfection, because this is what the building is communicating. Well, too bad if you compare the stadium, the national stadium that Japan built in Tokyo with Kengo Kuma for this year's Olympics, we see a different Japan. But this level of perfection that they achieved, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, somehow is missing today, I feel. This heroic perfection somehow is missing. Now, this picture is from the Kyoto railway station. We are going to arrive at it. Sorry, that picture should not have been there. I imagine when I made this presentation, when I prepared this PowerPoint presentation, I wanted to say something. That's why I incorporated this picture, but now I forgot what then I wanted to say. I made this PowerPoint presentation, I think 2 or 3 years ago. Again, the plans of I'm a little bit confused because the top views seem to be different from what we see here. But experimental house in Cordoba, in Argentina. And look at this, really, they fill me with joy and with even with amusement, they're joyous, they're cubes, if you will. It's one house, actually. It's one house, but has 3 bodies, cubical bodies, and you are inside, then you go out, then you are again inside, then you go out, and then you go inside. It's okay. I know that this is not easily acceptable in some parts of the world because we think, come on, why is it that I have to get out of my room in order to enter another room? Why not? Really, why not? I mean, this was done frequently in the so-called traditional rural architecture of Romania, where you went into the pridvor, veranda, and then you went to another room, or you went to the courtyard, and, you went to the toilet, which was also in the courtyard, and then you came back. It's okay. The relationship between the inside and the outside is not dogmatic. It's not as some stiff minds think. It can be like this, and in Argentina even more so, because the climate is not very harsh. Anyway, this is a house built by Hiroshi Hara in Argentina, with some colors and some innovations here and there. I like it. It's playful. It's it's like a kid playing with some cubes. Why not? And here are the plants. Very nice. I really would enjoy it. You are in a room and then you go out on the terrace and then you enter another room. This is done all the time in Japan. Kazuyo Seishima did something in this spirit, and Su Fujimoto. These Japanese, they don't seem to have a dogmatic understanding about a strict relationship between the interior and the exterior. They think holistically. So the outside is part of the inside, and the inside is part of the outside, and it's fine. This house, if it was done conventionally, it would have been much smaller, in the sense like this. You have the feeling that even if it's a small house, essentially, but you have the feeling that actually you possess, I mean, I'm talking about the owner of the house, several houses. not just one. So the feeling of being rich increases, but I'm not talking about monetary richness. The idea that more space is available to you, and there is this variety. It's a house but made of 3 courts which are separated by exterior terraces, and I like the idea, and I think it can be done in many climates, really, if we are not so stiff to think that, because this is not a monolithical thinking. Anyone who do the house would not do something like this. Would say, wait a minute, I love comfort. I don't want to get out in order to get in again. No, I want to work between all the rooms under the same roof and not be forced to go out. But that's exactly what I like about this. And I'm not even patriotic noticing the colors of the cubes, blue, red, and yellow. Although here they appear to be different, perhaps because it was night. Anyway, hello, Mr. Hara. Happy birthday to you, 85 years old, smoking and with a hippie's haircut. Nice. Professor in Tokyo of architecture. Very nice. Look at that sink there, with that little window in front of it. Very, very nice. Playful. Why not? Here they are again in Poland. Mr. Hiroshi Hara and his guests, his hosts, the hostess and the host, or 2 hostesses. Anyway, and he's the only one who doesn't sit on a chair. He sits on that, nice. Kyoto Railroad Station. Now, this is a big building, an important building in a hugely important city in Tokyo and the world, of course. Kyoto is a remarkable city. I didn't visit it, unfortunately, but from what I saw and what I read, and I know there are beautiful temples and gardens, but the railway station is not passeistic in its spirit, but futuristic, if I am to use this word. It's quite a generous public space. The pandemic complicated things probably, but hopefully one day the pandemic will go. Look at the complexities here of the roof, and there are many things happening here. It's architecture as urbanism almost. It's the public dimension made the architect think of this single function, the railway station, with the multitude of points of view, and this variety, I think, is very conducive to social life, to not feeling alone, belonging. In other words, it's a good building for a railway station, and all kinds of things happen here. I mean, I don't know exactly what are these, but I'm sure they do serve a function. And so he's not stiff. He's not inhibited and inhibiting. Again, Kyoto is the repository of great traditions, and yet the railway station promotes the new vigorously. Look at these stairs here. I mean, the certain people would say, it's a loss of money. You could have served the same, 2 doors at least with 1 stair. It's true, but these staircases have a function beyond function. I mean, have another function also beyond function. So they are graphic, okay, they cost a little bit of money, but I don't think they, added tragically to the cost of the whole building. But he made out of these four stairs something ornamental almost on the facade of this big building. We are going also to see a very tall building, a skyscraper, which is also itself very interesting and almost unique. Uh, we have to say they are inspiring. These Japanese architects are inspiring with a risk taking, with the ability to build anything. They are inspiring. For me, they are, and I'm sure they are for many people. And it's not a spoiled nation, it's not. They have tsunamis, they have earthquakes, they have all kinds of tragedies, but they don't complain and they move forward. And they work very, very hard, and it shows. Now, you could say, look at this, stair, who is going to work on this? It's too far away, it's too difficult, I better take the escalator. Well, considering that almost no one is seen or no one is seen on the stair, I guess many people think in this way. Yet the stairs are there for those who knows, might want to exercise or might want to, who knows, sit on a part of the stair and read something or talk with someone. I don't know. There is an option.
I love stairs. I
Pardon?
prefer I prefer walking on stairs than taking the elevator or the escalator.
Yes, well, I understand, but if you are tired, the escalator is still good. Anyway, so a very interesting building, and very interesting because the public dimension is almost rhetorically present. Christmas, Christmas in Japan, Christmas in Kyoto. Sorry, these pictures are not really great. Anyway, but again, this impresses me that a city so old and which has great reverence for the past, it shows it also has a great openness and reverence for the future, for the new. Both, it looks both ways. It's not stuck in the past. Hiroshi Hara in Kyoto, the railway station. And you can tell that this is a nation which achieved a great collective consciousness. You can tell that these people, these individuals, they belong together, perhaps more than other people in the world. the Umeda Sky Building. Of this, I mentioned something earlier in Osaka. So the railway station was in Kyoto. Now we go to Osaka and we see the so-called Sky Building, and you'll understand why. Look at this. You know, it's almost descended from some visions of the Russian constructivists at the beginning of the 20th century. The one who is excessively concerned with budget and with functionalism and so on might object to these things in between the two, because there are actually two buildings, or one building with a big hole in between, a schism, a rift in between the two buildings. They are united at the top and here also. But it's, it's intriguing, because you feel like going there and exploring, taking the escalator and go here, up here, and you don't know what is there. But this hole in the sky, because, he could have left the two buildings if he wanted to have two buildings unconnected, or here at the top allow for more sky to be seen. But somehow, paradoxically, by limiting through here the view of the sky to this, what you see through the circle, I think he emphasizes even more what the sky is. I don't know if I expressed well, but if I look at the sky here and the sky seen through this hole, somehow here seems to be more precious. And this reminds me of when I used to go to my grandmother's house in a village near Sibiu, and in the summer vacations as a child, as a pupil in school. And she had very small windows, but through a small window, let's say from her kitchen, I perceived the exterior as being very precious because it was filtered and it was limited. The same here, it is limited and it is filtered, but it becomes very precious somehow. Yeah, an interesting idea, and he did it. It was built in this way, as you can see. We need drama. I mean, human life is dramatic, at least from time to time. But we need also an art that is moving us. And when there is a certain level of drama, like here, you are intrigued, you are provoked, your curiosity is stirred up. That is, if you are still alive and not only apparently so. Like unfortunately many people seem to be. Anyway, look at what he did at the top. Very nice. And I like these escalators, which are seen from the outside, and they are, they have this steel carcass that, encloses them. And although they are circular, it seems, the structure itself is rectangular and prismatic. And I think they are very valid as architectonic expression, as he chose it to be. It would have been a risk here, to make just another tall building, rather banal, covered in glass and all the rest. But because of this interstitial space, this schismatic building becomes interesting. Why is it something positive that it is interesting? Well, I think we need interesting things in life. If we are to escape boredom, nothing wrong with an interesting architecture, with an interesting art, and with an interesting life. Not at all. I wonder what that man thought when he was, ascending towards his destination at the top of this building. Again, it could have been very easy to make just another skyscraper or another tall building. But he was able to transform something that could have been easily, rather banal, into something exceptional. Floating garden. Because architecture is also made in order to dream. It's not just made in order to serve some explicit functions. If we exclude the dimension of dreaming, life becomes impoverished. Now, a campus, a university campus in Tokyo, just like in the case of the railway station in Kyoto, this campus in Tokyo employs this internal public space, a vertical space, an atrium, and it is important, this space, because it is where the gatherings take place. It's an inner street. Other architects, of course, use it. It is not the only one. But again, trying to bring this catalyst for social life, although now we know with the pandemic things are complicated, is a good thing, is a positive thing. And there are bridges, and it's all about connecting separated parts. the drawings, which are not working drawings, also play a role in this architecture. So they have a parallel discourse themselves, the drawings, with the graphic beauty, the graphical complexity and creativity. Like this drawing. This drawing was made not for the building site, but for presentations, for exhibitions, and so on. And I don't know exactly what this picture is. He draws, I guess. You would say an old man, but he's not old because he's creative. I guess he's in Poland here too. That's it. I'm not going to talk about Kazuo Shinohara now. So